In the first lecture, we learned that all data in Python are objects, and every object has an identity, a type, and a value. I introduced Python built-in object types such as integers, boolean, strings, dictionaries, etc. Now it's time to create new type of objects. Imagine that I want to create an object called Sam. Sam has a first name, has a last name, and has age. So I can create a dictionary with the keys first name, last name, and age. And I will assign corresponding values to these keys. Then Sam is a dictionary object. There is another way to create Sam, but instead of creating directly the object, I create first a class called, let's say, person. I define what I need to create an object. These are called the attributes of the instance of this class. And I can also define the class methods. The difference between these two is that in the second, we encapsulate the data and its method in the class. By creating a class, we are hiding implementation of the functionality of the class, and we can focus on what the object does. Now, let's dive in. Creating a new class creates a new type of object, allowing new instances of that type to be made. Each class instance can have attributes attached to it for maintaining its state. Class instances can also have methods for modifying its state. When a class defines an init method, class instantiation automatically invokes init method for the newly created class instance. Parent class is the class being inherited from, also called base class, whereas the child class is the class that inherits from another class, also called derived class. Class definition syntax begins with class keyword. Then you add the name of the class, and the convention is an uppercase first letter. Then, to create an instance of this class, create the class method init, and the parameters of the method are self, which is the instance, and the attribute or attributes of the instance. Here we have just one attribute, name attribute of the instance, and we will assign the parameter name to this attribute. Then we will define the string representation of the instance we are creating with the string method. And finally, once we create the class, we can create an instance of the class by invoking the class name, which is vegetable, and with the parameter of the init method. So we only need one parameter, which is the name of the instance we are creating, and I will name potato. And the object I am creating, I will assign to a variable called potato. Let's make another example. Define a class called student. And this class has a class variable called ID number, and I assign initially 1 to ID number. Then I will create the init method with 4 arguments: self, the instance, first name, last name, and division. I will assign first name to first name attribute of the instance. I will assign last name to last name attribute of the instance, and I will assign division to division attribute of the instance. I will also create an attribute called ID of the instance, and I will assign the class variable student.id number to this attribute. and I will increment the class variable by 1, and I will create a last attribute called courses, and I will assign an empty dictionary to this attribute of the instance. Then I create string method, and I create 3 more methods to changes the state of the attributes. The first one is getCourse. It takes 2 arguments, the instance and the course name, and it changes the state of the attribute courses by assigning an empty list to the value of courses with the key course name. The next method is called exam result. It takes 3 arguments, the instance, course name, and the result. It changes the state of the attribute courses. It appends the result to the value which was initially an empty list to courses with key course name. And the last one is called getCourseResult. It takes 2 arguments, the instance and the course name, and it returns the value of courses with the key course name. Now let's practice on PyCharm on class called student. I will create an instance of the class student, and I will call the instance Nadine, which corresponds to self, the instance. And I will call the class student, and the parameters are first name, last name, and division. Nadine Leclerc, Mechanical Engineering. And similarly, I create another instance of the class student called Nicole, the instance, and with first name Nicole, last name Karen, and division Computer Science. I comment the string method of the class, and I will run to see if it prints the 2 instances I created. Yes, it prints, but it is not human readable. Now I will uncomment the string method, and I will rerun my code, and it becomes human readable. Nadine Leclerc, Mechanical Engineering, with the ID number 1, Nicole Karen, Computer Science, with the ID number 2. In my code, I will also call the methods I created. For example, for the instance Nadine, I want to add dynamics to the courses attribute. And similarly, with the help of the exam result method, I want to document the result of the course dynamics, and the result is 89. And finally, I want to print getCourseResult of Nadine of dynamics. I will run my code, and I get 89. Another example, a class called coordinates, and its geographic coordinates. The init method has 4 arguments: latitude, polar, longitude, and parallel. So I assign latitude to the latitude attribute of the instance. I assign polar to the polar attribute of the instance, assign longitude to the longitude attribute of the instance, and parallel to parallel attribute of the instance. And meanwhile, note that polar can be north or south and parallel can be east or west. And define a method called string, and within the method I add character 176, which refers to the degree sign. Create an instance of the class coordinates with 4 arguments, latitude 9.479 south and longitude 147.1494, and the parallel is east. Then I want to print the instance I created. It nicely prints the coordinates of Port Moresby. Now let me introduce parent class, child class example. First of all, from coordinate, import the class called coordinates, and from math, import some methods. Create a class called country, it's the parent class, and define the init method with one variable, one parameter, country name, and assign country name to the attribute called country name of the instance. Define the string method of the class and define a method called getCountryName, which returns the country name attribute of the instance. Then we will define another class called city, but it is the child class of country. And here, pay attention, define the init method of the class with 2 parameters, city name and country name, and call the init method of the parent class with country name, with parameter country name, and assign city name to city name attribute of the instance. Create the string method of the class and create a method called getCityName, and it returns the city name attribute of the instance. Then, before moving on the third class, I want to create an instance of the class city with city name Munich and country name Germany arguments, and I want to print Munich getCountryName. As you can see, the city class does not have a method called getCountryName, but as the city class is the child class of the country class, it will inherit from the parent class. And the parent class has a method called getCountryName. When I run, it prints Germany. The third class is called airport, and it's also a child class. It is derived from city class, which is derived from the country class. And again, as it is a child class, the init method, which accepts 7 arguments, city name, country name, airport name, latitude, polar, longitude and parallel. Then first of all, it calls the init method of the superclass or parent class with 2 arguments, city name and country name. Then assign airport name to airport name attribute of the instance, and create an object, coordinate object with latitude, polar, longitude and parallel, and assign it to the coordinate attribute of the instance. Then define the string method of the class airport. Define a method called getCoordinate, which returns coordinate attribute of the instance. And then I will override the subtraction method, which has two arguments, self and other. Self is the instance, other is another instance of the class airport. And it will calculate the distance between two geographic coordinates. You can find on internet the formula, so that's why I will not explain all the formula, but at the end it returns the distance between self and other. I create an instance of the class airport with 7 parameters: city name Paris, country name France, airport name Roissy, and the corresponding latitude, polar, longitude, and parallel. Then I want to call the instance with the method getCountryName. But I know that the airport does not have a method called getCountryName. But what I know is that airport inherits from city, city inherits from country. So airport also inherits from country. And when I run getCountryName method with the instance Roissy gives me France. I will create another instance of the class airport, Ezeiza, city name Buenos Aires, country name Argentine, and airport name Ezeiza with the corresponding coordinates. And the distance between Roissy and Ezeiza, I will compute Roissy subtract Ezeiza, and I will assign the result to the variable called distance between Roissy and Ezeiza. Then I will print distance between Roissy and Ezeiza is the variable kilometer. I will run my code, and the distance between Roissy and Ezeiza is 11,095 kilometers. Wrap up. I would like to remind you the example I gave in the introduction. There is a way to create an object having name Sam with the first name, last name, and age. But if you create it with a dictionary, you lose all the advantage that object-oriented programming can offer. Two of them are abstraction and encapsulation. Abstraction focuses on hiding implementation details and exposing only the essential functionality of an object. Encapsulation allows you to bundle attributes and methods within a class to create a cohesive unit. It helps to maintain data integrity and promotes modular, secure code. Have you ever thought how the list class method append works? But you used a lot of times.